thought I would do something just a little different. I had to head down to my gunsmith and drop off a couple barrels, so I grabbed my camera, and when I got there, I thought, hey, let's see if he will let me take a little bit of his time. So he said, sure, let's take 20 or 30 minutes, talk about a couple topics, and see what happens. So here is a little bit of that conversation we had. In addition to regular rifle work, Terry also does any kind of inletting and stock work that's necessary. And I can't even count how many rifles on the line at my 600 group have been worked on in one way or another by him. This happens to be a Richards Microfit. It started life as basically a tree stump. And after Terry's done working on it, it will be an absolute piece of art. Well, I'm here with my gunsmith, Terry, and he's a fairly private person like I am, so he'd prefer that people weren't knocking down his door. And I know that sounds funny, but Terry's business is really built around what I call boutique gunsmithing. He is a very specialized kinds of gunsmith, focusing on target, occasionally a hunting rifle for somebody, but really his goal is to build small group guns. He doesn't work on pistols, doesn't work on revolvers, doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. He builds rifles that just plain shoot. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get a little bit of his time and thought it would be great to share some of his takes on, what makes a gunsmith, what should you look for, what are his experiences, and, hopefully this won't be the last time him and I can sit down and talk. But, first off, Terry, you've done work on bench rest Hall of Fame shooters, you've worked on countless national record barrels. What kind of provenance have you been fortunate enough to have?
Well, I've been in the bench rest end of it. Been fortunate enough to do some work for some Hall of Fame shooters, and I think my customers are up to almost 50 Hall of Fame points now, and I don't know, I've lost track of the national records. I think a dozen or 15 or something like that. And also been fortunate enough to work on some really good F-class shooters like you and David, and you guys have set some national records too.
Yeah, my buddy David with your rifles, part of his team has set, I think, at least half a dozen national records.
Yeah, so my goal is just to build the best rifle I can.
Oh, that's great. You don't obviously have walking traffic. We're not in a retail store. But, when you look at the gunsmithing world in general, and you think about people who are maybe new to the sport or things like that, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about, because I know I certainly had some misconceptions, but like when people come to you and say, well, what do you do? I've watched YouTube. It doesn't look that hard. How do you wrap your brain around the modern world where anybody can be an expert overnight?
That's a complicated question. Well, the problem, I guess, is the way you phrase that is if they're watching YouTube videos, they're getting a lot of bad information.
Yeah.
There's many videos out there, and I usually watch them just to see if I can learn something. And what I found is that of all those people who are making those videos, there's very, very few that actually make a video that shows the correct way to do something. It seems like the guys who really know what they're doing, they're not posting on the internet, and they're not making videos.
They got better things to do, like make rifles, right?
I guess, and so a lot of guys seem to think if I buy a lathe and I watch a video, I can chamber barrels. Well, you probably can chamber barrels, but I don't know. It takes a very specialized setup and application to make what I call a championship barrel. And unfortunately, the videos we see on YouTube, they're partially there, or they have partial knowledge. And what I see is their setups are not correct, the way they go about setting stuff up. And it took me a long time to figure out what I needed to do to get where I wanted to be. When I started out, I watched all the videos like everybody else and bought the books and did it the way they said, because when I started out, I didn't have a clue how to change.
And when you say watch videos, you had to watch VHS tapes.
Yeah, that's right.
There weren't even DVDs when you started.
That's right. It was just tapes. And after a while, I figured out that what they were telling me wasn't going to get me where I wanted to be. So,
and really, to be clear, what we're talking about is the difference between building a barrel that's 98% and a barrel that's 99.9%. Right? I mean,
well, or more like 90% and 99%.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, some of the videos that some guys do are just laughable. I mean, they're so far off. And a lot of them, it's just, they're not very far off. They're just a little bit off. And in this game, in my opinion, you got to be right on. I mean, you got to get that bullet started dead straight down the barrel. And so you've got to set up so that when you cut your chamber, it's straight with the barrel. And a lot of these guys, the way they set up, it's not going to be.
And I know when we talk, and you know, we've been, you know, I've been bringing barrels here for 4 or 5 years now. I know the way you've always explained it, and when we talk, and you know, we have countless conversations, you always view gunsmithing and the shooting process, it's all connected. It's like a body. You know, you don't just go, well, I'm chambering a barrel. You look at it more holistically, right?
Well, yeah. The other thing is, it helps if your gunsmith shoots. You know, if he's shooting F class or bench rest, then he's got a better idea of what it is you need.
Yeah.
You know, so number one, I think that's a big help. I guess to me, when I do a barrel for a customer, there's 3 things that I want to accomplish. Number one, I want to get the bullet started straight down the barrel.
Yeah.
Number 2, I want to get the headspace right, because you guys do multiple barrels. I try to get my headspace within 0 or within a half a thousandths on every barrel, so that you can interchange brass.
Right.
I had a guy call me the other day and said he had 4 6.5 Creedmoors done by 4 gunsmiths, and he said all the headspaces were different. So he said to fix that, he said he had the next 2 barrels done by 1 guy, and he said the headspace was still different. And so the third thing that I try to do is to cut the chamber to reamer dimensions. It's pretty easy to cut a chamber oversized if you don't know what you're doing. And if you get a chamber that's a little bit oversized and you shoot brass in that chamber and then try and put it in a smaller chamber, you can't size it down enough. It won't go.
Right, especially down near the web and stuff.
Right, yeah. Exactly. So I'm trying to get you, as I said, a bullet straight down the barrel, a headspace that's repeatable,
yeah,
and a chamber that's the same diameter and round.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I mean, you know, I've got multiple barrels at home. In fact, I just swapped one out. The one I shot this weekend, it's now off the gun because it's my hammer barrel. I've now got my weekday barrel on. You know, and I can go back and forth with the same brass, same load, 0 difference. You know, and I know David's, at this point, I think David's got, my buddy, he's got 9 barrels running on 2 guns right now, and all of them interchangeable. So, you know, the ability to swap barrels is critical in our game.
Well, it is, and it takes knowledge and experience to know how to do that, at least in my opinion. So I think that, you know, you couldn't have 9 barrels and 9 different sets of brass.
Yeah. Well, that would be a pain.
Yeah. So just things like that. I'm not gonna tell you how I go about chambering
Oh,
the
sure.
barrel, how I set up.
Yeah.
But there's, I don't know, any one of probably a dozen or maybe more really good gunsmiths in this country that really know what they're doing,
Yeah.
that turn out really first class stuff. But there's a whole lot more that just turn out mediocre stuff,
Yeah.
just because, you know, they don't have the experience or they're not thinking the process through. I think part of it is not thinking the process through of, you know, how to set up and how to do it and what actually happens in the chamber
Yeah.
when you pull a trigger.
Yeah. What you know, when I first started getting barrels done, I had a very crazy view of what happened. In my head, I brought you a barrel. Like, I never understood why it took so long or why it costs what it does. And to be honest, you're cheaper than most. But you know, you see some of these gunsmiths that charge $300, $400, $500 to chamber a barrel, and you think that's ludicrous. Like, how does it cost that much? And no matter what a gunsmith charges, you know, my misconception was that you put a barrel in a lathe, you set up the reamer, you pushed a couple buttons, and you let it go, and you went and ate lunch, you know, or you were able to do another function in the shop while that barrel was being cut. And it wasn't until I spent time watching you cut a barrel and, you know, doing some research online that I really realized that you know, it's a hands-on process.
Yes.
You know, like, how much of chambering a barrel would you say is you on the machine?
Well, for me, it's 100%.
Okay.
Some of the guys have CNC machines now, and so they can set a CNC machine up to cut the trunnion and cut the threads and so on, you know. So they're not actually hands-on, but those are guys, I think, that turn out a lot of barrels every day. I've got about, I don't know, John, 20, 25 guys that I work with.
Yeah.
And they keep me as busy as I want to be because they go through a lot of barrels, or you guys go through a lot of barrels every year, and then plus the stock work. The stock work takes forever. So I've worked out a process with my lathe that I do barrels, and I guess those guys with CNC machines do too. I can see some problems with CNC setups, in my opinion, but I think some of those guys has got those problems worked out.
Yeah.
Because I think some of them turn out some pretty good barrels, you know. So in my case, it's 100%. When I set a barrel up in the lathe and get it dialed in, you know, what people need to understand is the hole through the barrel is not straight. You know,
it curves up or down.
It's either a curve up or down, or a double curve, or sometimes it's like a snake. Out of the hundreds and hundreds of barrels I've had in my lathe, I've only had a handful that I look through and say they were straight.
Yeah.
So, depending on how straight the hole is, it takes me anywhere from 10 or 15 minutes to set a barrel up to. I might work with it for an hour.
Just to get it indexed.
Just to get it where I want it.
Yeah.
And with some barrels, I never do get it where I want it. You know, if they're like this,
You just take your best shot at it.
Yeah, either that or send the barrel back,
Yeah.
you know. Because I'm not going to send a barrel out of here that I don't think will shoot.
Yeah.
Because, number one, you paid $300 and $350, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Plus you're paying me to chamber it.
Yeah.
So it's not fair to you or the customer to turn out bad stuff. Anyway, for me it's 100%.
And what, you know, for people that have never had a barrel chambered or never seen the process, for you, from the time you grab a barrel and you start chambering it, like, what are we talking? Minutes, hours, a day? Like, to start to finish on a normal barrel, no fun fancy breaks or anything, but just chambering a barrel so it goes on a gun. Like, if you're doing one of my barrels, like, what are we talking time-wise?
Well, again, part of that is how long it takes to set up and how much, pre-boring I have to do and so on. 3 or 4 hours probably, and if I gotta put a brake on or like one of Eric's tuners on, that's another half hour, an hour to get the front of the barrel done, because once you turn the barrel around the lathe, you got to reset the whole thing up again.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of this stuff was really new, for me at the time, and so I think that's really important. What as a gunsmith, not in terms of like trying to pick on customers, but as a gunsmith, what do you find are similarities between customers that you find not maybe annoying, but things that are counterproductive to your succeeding in doing your job? What are there things that people ask for that really aren't necessary that you have to explain or kind of talk people out of? You know what I'm trying to say? Like what?
Yeah, I think no. When I first started doing this and started getting customers, most of those people were unaware, and so I got lots and lots and lots of questions, and so most of those people have been pretty receptive to what I've told them and what to do. And from your personal experience that when you first started loading for long range, there's a lot of things you didn't know, and you went to our classes, and now you're giving the classes because you've learned. So I kind of cherry pick my customers, and so I can say that pretty much everybody that I do business with is pretty receptive and don't ask for things that aren't realistic. So I guess I'm pretty lucky.
What is the most unrealistic thing you've had somebody ask for that you can think of?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I had a guy call me once, and he said, "So-and-so gave me your name," and he said, "I want you to build a, I think it was a tactical rifle, if I remember right." He wanted a tactical rifle built, and he said, "Okay." He said, "Now it's going to shoot 1/4-inch groups," and he said, "and you're going to guarantee that it's going to shoot 1/4-inch groups, and it's going to shoot 1/4-inch groups out to 200, and you're going to guarantee that." And so I said, "Well, I'm not going to guarantee anything. I can't. Number one, I don't know if you can shoot.
Yeah.
Number two, I don't know if you know how to reload.
Yeah.
Number three, I can't control the quality of the barrel. And number four, I think you better go somewhere else."
Yeah.
So
the only thing you can guarantee is you weren't doing it.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
No, that's really great.
Yeah.
What do you think you see as the greatest challenge today in terms of building an accurate rifle? Is it the quality of the barrel? Is it the tooling? Are reamers getting better or worse? Are people getting lazy in certain production areas? Like what's the biggest challenge you face when it comes to building a rifle? Lead times? What do you see?
You mean as far as the components we work with?
Yeah, component-wise, like whether it's the reamers, the barrels, the actions. Like what's the biggest impedance right now to building a quality small group rifle?
Well, we're extremely fortunate nowadays in that we've got many, many good action makers. There's a lot of really good actions out there. There's a lot of really good barrels out there. Good triggers, good glass, good stocks, good brass, good bullets.
Yeah.
I use JGS reamers exclusively because, in my opinion, they're the best. They get them to you when they say they will, and when I get them, they're actually ground to the specs that I ordered.
Yeah, I know that's what you've always had me order, and I know every reamer I've had has been a JGS, and we've never had issues. I know there's certainly some other quality ones out there too, but JGS is local for us. They're only an hour away, and they're knowledgeable in that when I call up and say
bring up a dasher reamer on your screen. Okay, this is what I want to change.
Yeah.
I want to change this number. I want to change that number. And they'll do that, and they have knowledgeable people that understand. If I have questions about lead angle or something like that, and so I think components-wise. There's not a lot of challenges nowadays. It's not like it was 20 years ago when the barrels weren't as good, the brass wasn't as good, the actions weren't as good. There's Brooks turns out good barrels, so does Bartline, so does Krieger, and so does several others. We pretty much use Brooks. Because I like Brooks because they turn out a really good barrel. You shot some awesome scores yesterday with the Brooks barrel. Yeah. The other reason I like Brooks is they're easy to deal with. If there's a problem with the barrel, they will fix it no problem. Yeah. I've had some of the big names that really drag their feet when it comes to replacing the bad barrels. So they have pretty good turnaround time as far as I think they're 3 or 4 months out right now.
Yeah, and I just talked to Ken yesterday.
Yeah, and I think some of them are like a year out now.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But anyway, that's a hard question. I don't think the biggest challenge is getting it chambered right.
Yeah.
I think components-wise, I think we're in a really good place.
That's good. Well, I appreciate your time. I just have one more question, and you've been in this game a long time. You used to shoot, what would be considered, almost professional silhouette and long-range pistol, and you've done stuff for 50 years now.
Yeah.
What do you think is I don't want to say silliest innovation, but what do you think is the most needless innovation that everybody has adopted that they probably really don't need? Is it these outrageous front rests? Is it crazy stocks? Is it excessive scopes? Like, what do you see as the thing where people spend money and they really, you go, well, we could do the same thing 50 years ago?
Well, I always say the 3 things you need for good long-range ammo is seating depth, neck tension, and ignition.
Yeah.
Ignition's really a big deal. People don't realize how important that is. You've got to hit the primer the same every time. I can't tell you how many times I've been at matches and shooting bench rest or whatever, and all of a sudden the guy's groups will open up.
Yeah.
And you walk over there and you look and you see that one of these primers has been punched. So that disc is back in the bolt and the firing pin's dragging on it and his group's just opened up. Take the thing apart, clean that disc out, put it back together, and it goes right back to shooting.
Yeah.
So people, you need to change your firing pin springs every couple of years. I think to answer your question is this idea that you need an aluminum firing pin so that it'll make your lock time faster. It's just ridiculous. Nobody can tell the difference between 1/1,000,000th and 2/1,000,000th of lock time, And with an aluminum firing pin, you don't get enough energy, so you have to put in a big heavy spring to compensate for that. So now you can't get the bolt open. Those fast lock time firing pins, that's just, I'm sorry, but it's just stupid.
Yeah.
I like, as a matter of fact, some of the short range bench rest guys has added tungsten to the firing pins to make them heavier.
Yeah.
So I like just a good standard steel firing pin with, a good 22 to 24 pound spring in it to get good consistent ignition. And that aluminum firing pin, that's just unbelievable. That's probably one of the biggest, I guess. But there's others too.
And one of the things that always amazes me is, and this is in no way meant to be a negative, but when you show up and trust me when I tell you guys that Terry shoots, at an amazingly efficient level. This guy's always at the top of our summer league. He can clean a target like nobody's business, but he does it off one of the oldest rear rests and oldest front rests I think anybody on the line shoots with. You probably had that rear bag since before I was born, right?
Yeah.
And
the front rest I made.
And you made the front rest. So while there are certainly innovations, and I'm a huge fan of new technology, Terry definitely proves the point that if you know what you're doing, if you know how to load, and if you build the right gun, you can do it off of, very simple but effective rests.
Yeah, I built, so this rest I'm using now, I've had 10 years probably anyway.
Yeah.
And it's prototype number 4. I build it to suit my own needs. And I don't like coaxial rest.
You use a Mariner wheel style, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people like them. I've tried them. As a matter of fact, I bought a Seb and used it for a while and didn't like it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I only use a coaxial rest environment for score, because you got to move from target to target to target, environment for score, and so coaxial rest is just about a must in that. But to go and shoot a fixed target like at 600 where nothing's moving, I don't see any point. I spend too much time moving that handle around trying to get the crosshairs exactly where I want.
Yeah.
And with the way my rest works, I can do that in just a second or two.
Yeah.
And I just, like I said, I built the rest to suit my needs, and it's worked really well for me. I've also got a one-piece rest that I use sometimes.
Yeah, I've seen that around here.
Yeah. Works really well. If you've got, if you're like, well, I used to have a lot of time, I don't have time anymore, but.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's just great, and I appreciate the time. I'll let you get back to work here, but hopefully when I come down to pick up my barrels here, maybe we can have another talk, and we'll.
Yeah. Well, so something that I'd like to bring up was that how well our group gets along and does. When I first started this, I really encouraged people. I got all these questions from all these people.
Yeah.
How do you load? How do you do this? And I really encouraged them to share information. So I think one of the reasons that our group does, and there's dozen at least world-class shooters come out of that group.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because they share. We all share information.
Yeah.
That and shoot a lot every week. You guys are using first-class components. You're using really good actions and barrels and stocks and so on. And the combination of really good equipment, sharing information, giving really good advanced reloading classes, lots of trigger time, shooting at different ranges under different conditions. You guys shoot well. Matter of fact, you outshot some of the best yesterday.
Every dog has its day, right?
Yeah. Well, or like with me, it'd be every blind hog finds an acorn once in a while. But you guys shoot really, really well, and I made the decision a few years ago that I was just going to concentrate on that group.
Yeah.
I've got some bench rest shooters that like Bill Johnson, who's a world-class shooter.
Yeah.
I do some bench rest stuff and most of the 600-yard stuff. And so there's some people that kind of come and go in the 600-yard stuff. And so I want to leave myself open for the new guys that are coming to the 600-yard that want good equipment, So it's a really, really good group that you guys, and I want to thank you personally for all the work you've done in running the group and doing the videos and helping everybody out and giving the classes, and so a big thank you to you.
Well, thank you, Terry. I always tell people, and I've heard this, for ages, which is, success is where luck and preparedness intersect, right?
Yeah.
And without your gunsmithing, without the reloading aspect, without all these things, I wouldn't be prepared. And and then it's just a little bit of luck on any given day, whether it was your day to read the wind right or something like that. But I always say that I couldn't succeed without your barrels. And
Well, we couldn't shoot if you weren't running the place. You know, if you weren't
appreciate
running
that.
the matches, we didn't have a place to shoot. You know, oh, it's kind of a group effort, I guess. And,
it is.
and-
We're fortunate. We shoot 63 times a year at 600 yards alone. And, that's massive trigger time at 600 yards. So we're really
Yeah.
fortunate. I go through, I think last year was a little low. I think I only went through like 4,500, maybe just under 5,000 rounds last year. 3 or 4 barrels, I can't remember. A year before it was 4 or 5 barrels and 5 or 6,000 rounds. So, I mean, we get a ton of trigger time. And, anyway, I appreciate your time, Terry. And, we'll do this some more.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.